The other kind of a stitch we're going to look at for our extra credit for our hand sewing practice project is a hemmed cross stitch. And this is a way to make the edge of your fabric be finished nicely. So you can see, right, I've got really frayed, I'm frayed along the edge of my fabric here. That's okay because we're going to hide that. So the first thing you want to do when you're doing a hemmed cross stitch is fold your fabric. If I had an iron, I would press this down so we got a really nice straight fold. And we're going to fold that over twice with that nice straight fold for our hem. Obviously, if we were hemming something like pants or a skirt or something on an actual garment and not just a practice project, we would hem this a certain amount according to our pattern and the measurements of our actor, or however short we needed to make these pants. But since this is just practice, just fold it over maybe a half an inch or so, maybe a little more. I'm gonna fold that twice so we have a nice even fold here going in a straight line across the length of our fabric here. Now what we're gonna do, we're going to take our thread with a knot in it, same as usual. I'm gonna make that knot in the long tail of our thread. So remember, we've got the short tail, which is coming through the needle, and the long tail, which has got our knot at the end of it. So we're going to make that knot. And then we're going to come in through this fold so that we're coming up out of this fold here. So kind of similar to what we did with slip stitch. Now we're going to start cross stitching. So I like to cross stitch vertically. I like to hold it like this. Some people will cross stitch across and hold their fabric horizontally when they do it. Neither is necessarily better than the other. It's just whatever works for you. So to cross stitch, I am going to take a little teeny tiny nibble out of my fabric here, just a couple of little tiny fibers that I'm going to pick up with my needle. And I'm going to pull through towards me and make my first little tiny stitch there. Then I'm going to take a bigger bite out of my folded fabric down here. I'm going to make sure when I go through and I push through here that I don't go through all of my layers of fabric. So I don't want to be poking through on the other side here like this. I only want to go through my fabric in my fold here. So when I make this stitch, again, coming back towards myself, and I pull through there, I don't want to be seeing that poking through on the other side. Now that I've done that though, I've gone through my folded fabric. I'm going to come back up and I'm going to take another little tiny piece out of my normal part of my fabric, my part of my fabric that I am seeing from the other side. And again, do that little cross. You can see we're making little X's here, which is why it's called cross stitching or cross stitch hem, because we're making these crosses. I'm going to come back now. I'm going to not go through all the pieces, just go through the first two, and make another big stitch here. And then I'm just going to keep going like this, making little stitches and big stitches. Little stitches up in the part we can see from the other side, big stitches in the part we can't. And I'm going to keep going until I've got my whole hem done. let's say that that was what we needed. I've gone across my whole hem now with my cross stitches, and I need to finish it now. So to finish it, I'm going to make that little ending knot, right, the same way that we usually do. So I'm going to come back down here onto my part that we won't see. I'm going to take a little teeny tiny stitch out of my fabric, and I'm going to use this to make that loop. So we're going to pull through here, pull our thread through till we're left with a little loop in our thread. And then we're going to come through that loop and pull through nice and tight. So coming through that loop again, pulling nice and tight under the stitches, coming through that loop, pulling nice and tight. And now we've got it finished just the same way we normally would. I'm going to cut off my extra thread. And when we look at it from the front, we can see, right, all we can see are those little teeny tiny bites we took, those little teeny tiny stitches, and all of our X's, our big stitches, are hidden underneath behind this top layer of fabric here. So we've got our X's on the back side, the wrong side of our fabric, holding this hem up. And then on the right side of our fabric, we've got these little teeny tiny stitches. You can imagine, right, that if I'd used the same color thread as my fabric, these stitches would be really, really hard to see because they're so small, which is exactly what we want. And the end of our hem of our fabric, it's nice and folded over. It's nice and smooth and pretty. So this is a cross stitched hem.